Hey, how are you?
Yeah. How are you,
Fine.
Yaakov?
Baruch Hashem, fine. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Good. Happy Yom Yerushalayim.
Hey, hey, you're supposed to say Chag Sameach.
I'm saying Chag Sameach too. Absolutely. I think everyone's out celebrating Yom Yerushalayim. Hey, Ernie. Good morning.
Shalom Aleichem.
It's nice and bright there.
It's very warm.
Yeah.
We're in Renana, so it's
Uh-huh.
we're having a little bit of a chamsin here.
Uh-huh. Very good. I guess our fellow attendees are out celebrating Yom Yerushalayim.
Where they are.
There may be, well, there's probably a tefillah chagigit. Probably in Israel Century City has one.
I know Hyla and I are going. I think Beth Jacob has a minyan tomorrow with Hallel and
Right.
um, celebratory, and so I think we're going to go at 7:40.
Young
So
Israel says.
yeah, I don't think Shari Tzedek does. So anyway, we'll go.
Hey,
We finished Mincha. I think we're in Ma'ariv.
Yeah, we are on page 315.
Okay. Earliest time for Ma'ariv and Kriyat Shema. In the previous year, we discussed the latest time for reciting Mincha. Remember, we had a machlokas between Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. According to the Chachamim, you can daven mincha all the way to Shkia. According to Rav Yehuda, you have to start by plaga min. You have to stop by plaga mincha. And that was the basis of a number of issues that we dealt with then. So the earliest time to recite Ma'ariv is dependent on the same question. Let's go back to the Gemara that we learned in Masechta Brachos. Midirav matzli shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos b'bod yom. There's a famous Gemara that Rav would daven Kabbalah Shabbos. He would do Makabel Shabbos early, even before Shkias Achama. B'bod yom means while it was still day. Neshma mino halachik Rabbi Yehuda. So remember, Rabbi Yehuda is the one who said, Mincha, you have to stop. Harold, good morning or good evening. Good morning, Harold. We're on page 315. We said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Mincha, you have to stop saying by Plaga Mincha, which is about like an hour before Shkia. Then, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can daven Ma'ariv while it's still day, because after Plag, he considers that already a time that you could daven Ma'ariv. That's why the Gemara concludes that Rav, who's Makabel Shabbos and saying Ma'ariv, Chaim, again, we're on page 315, where we're discussing the earliest time for Ma'ariv. We said it's totally in the machlokas we had before between Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. Where Rav Yehuda said, good morning, good evening, Bernie, page 315.
What page, please?
Page 315.
Thank you.
We're dealing with the earliest time to daven Ma'ariv. The Gemara in Masechta Brachos quotes that Rav used to daven Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv for Shabbos already while it was still day. Shema mino halachik Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara assumes from there then that in the battle between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda said that Mincha you have to say before Plag Mincha, which is about an hour before Shkia. Therefore, after Plag, according to Rav Yehuda, you can already start davening Ma'ariv. And that's how the Gemara assumes that by Rav davening Ma'ariv Friday, already while it's still daytime, you must be holding like the Chachamim. So the Gemara says, Rabbi, just the Pumfakir, just the opposite. Rav Huna M'Rabanan lahavim matzli ad urta. Rav Huna and the Chachamim wouldn't pray until evening, let's say at least until Shkia. Shmamina ein halachik Rabbi Yehuda. Comes from that halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to wait at least until Shkia to say Ma'ariv. According to Rabbi Yehuda, as the latest time for Mincha is Plag Mincha, one may also recite Ma'ariv after this time. Look at the footnote, see the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, who writes that the flexibility to daven Ma'ariv before night is a feature of the fact that Ma'ariv is voluntary. Remember, we learned last time, Ma'ariv is a reshus. It's not obligatory like Shachris and Mincha, because those are connected to the Korbanei Tzibur, to the Tamid Shel Shachris and the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. We said Ma'ariv is a reshus because it has to do with the burning of the Evor Mukdorim. That when you have a Korban Olah and you have to burn the limbs, that it was kosher to burn the limbs at night. So it could be that the limbs would be burnt all the way in the daytime too, and there'd be nothing to burn at night. That's why it means it's a reshus. It's not obligatory. It's not absolutely for sure that there would be limbs to burn at night. Now, the Gemara over there said that already in the times of the Amoraim, they accepted Ma'ariv as a chiyuv. So we daven Ma'ariv as a chiyuv, but it started out as a reshus. Back to the footnote of Rambam. It appears that according to the Rambam, the possibility of davening Ma'ariv early does not follow automatically from the view of Rav Yehuda. Although the Rambam only writes the leniency to daven Ma'ariv early on Friday night and on Motzei Shabbos. The Kesef Mishnah is Rav Yosef Karo, major commentary on the Rambam, understands that this was only because he used the language of Rav in the Gemara, not because there's any difference between these nights and other weeknights. But the Yad Pshuta, which is Rav Nachum Rabinovich on the Rambam, suggests that the leniency only applies when one davens early in order to subsequently fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush on Friday night, or Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, means it's not necessarily totally ha-baha. It means this machlokas between Rav Yehuda and the Chacham regarding when Mincha has nothing to do with Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv would still need Shkia. Back to the regular text. According to Chachamim, one may daven Mincha until evening, and one may certainly not daven Ma'ariv before night. As discussed in the previous shir, the Gemara continues by saying that since there's no definitive ruling, if you remember, the Gemara ends up saying, if you want, you can paskin like him. If you want, you can't paskin. We just can't have a tarti de satri. You can't use on one day the kul of both. Ruling one may choose to follow either view, provided the choice is made consistently and not to give you a kul on a specific day. Now, what about seis? Is there an opinion that you can only daven Ma'ariv once you have 3 stars? Meaning, there's a 45-minute to 60-minute period of Ben Hashmashos between Shkia and Seis that we live in, this Ben Hashmashos period. Is there opinions that Ma'ariv, you have to wait till Seis HaKarchavim? Although there's some flexibility with respect to the time for reciting the Amid of Ma'ariv, the time for reciting Kriyat Shema at night appears to be more absolute. We discussed this when we studied Kriyat Shema, volume 10. And that's why they always make an announcement in shuls like Shar Tefillah or Young Israel or Shari Tzedek, I was there too, that in the shuls that daven Ma'ariv after Shkia, the rabbi usually makes an announcement, please make sure to repeat Kriyat Shema after Tzei Kerchavim, because the rule regarding the Shmona Esrei of Ma'ariv is a little bit more lenient, and you can be yotzei. We don't have to repeat the Shmona when we daven Ma'ariv Ben Hashmashos after Shkia, but before it says, no one says, "Oh, you got to daven the Shmona Esrei again." According to all opinions, you're Yotze Ma'ariv at that point. But there is an issue regarding Kriya Shema. We want to say Kriya Shema with its Birchos, with its brachos. In Ma'ariv, there's 2 brachos before, 1 bracha after, and 2 brachos after. Excuse me. In Ma'ariv, there's 2 brachos before, 2 brachos after. In Shachris, there's 2 brachos before, 1 bracha after. That's the takon of the chachamim that Kriya Shema have to say it with birchos seha. That's 1 din. So that's the Ma'ariv. But the Kriya Shema should repeat it after it says. And let's see what the Mishnah in Masechta Brachos, when it discusses the time for Kriya Shema. The first Mishnah in Shas, Me'emasai Korin Shema Barvis. From when do we read Ma'ariv? Misha Kohanim Nichnasim Lechol B'Trumasa. So the Mishnah didn't give a time. It gave an event. It said when the Kohanim went to eat their truma. Amar Mar. Misha Kohanim Nichnasim Lechol B'Truma. What is that? Michte. Kohanim Emes Kochel Truma. I mean, how does that help us? When did they eat the truma? Says the Gemara Mishas Tzeisak Rechavim. So when the Mishnah says that when do you read Kriya Shema, the time that the Kohanim eat means tzeis. Ask the Gemara, why are you being so opaque? Listening Mishas Tzeisak Rechavim. Just say it simply. So Milsagavucha Kamashman, because it wanted to give me 2 laws. Number 1, Kohanim Emes Kochli B'Truma Mishas Tzeisak Rechavim. In this manner, the Mishnah taught us 2 laws. According to the Gemara, Kriya Shema may be recited at night, only after it says the emergence of the stars. Now, it's not so pashut. What exactly constitutes emergence of the stars? And here's where we get the issue of the Rabbeinu Tam's man, where you see people, Motzei Shabbos, following Rabbeinu Tam, who is the most machmir regarding the time of when Tzeisak Rechavim starts. Rabbeinu Yonah write that this is the same as the time of the end of Shabbos, which the Gemara says explicitly is the time of the emergence of 3 average-sized stars. However, since this is still difficult to measure, in both cases, we wait until 3 small stars are visible, which is a later period of time. Says the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah in their commentary in Brachos here. That which we said, that Laila definitely starts by Tzeis. That means after Shkiyas Achama, there's a debate. Maybe it is Laila, maybe it's not Laila, but definitely Vadai Laila begins after Tzeis. But says the Rabbeinu Yonah Talmidim, Dafka Gimel Kachavim Beinonim. You normally have to wait until 3 middle average-sized stars. Aval Pachas, smaller stars, Aval Pachas, Law of Laila. This is what they said in Shabbos. Koichav echad yom. When you see 1 star, it's still day. Days, when you see 2 stars, it's bein hashmashot. Gimel laila. And I'm reading the law. Over there we said, loy koichavim g'dolim. We're not talking about big stars. Hanirim bayom. That normally can be seen in the daytime. The lo koichavim k'tanim hanirim balayla. We're not talking about small stars that can only be seen at night. Ela beinonim. We're talking about average-sized stars, middle. The kivan shekain, and since that's true, ve'ena kol bekiyin. Not everybody is expert astronomically to know the difference between a small star and a middle star. Tzarech li zahir, ad sheyu aktanim. We should be machmir, wait until you see the 3 little ones. V'chei b'motzei Shabbos. Same goes for that. When is the end of Shabbos? Tzarech li zahir gamkein. Shelo lasos shum maloch ad sheyu gimel kachavim k'tanim. You should wait. So now let's deal with the practical calculations of Tzeisak Rechavim based on this Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah. Determining the time of Tzeisak Rechavim by looking for the stars is usually difficult to do in practice due to a number of factors. It is sometimes cloudy. electric lights inside a city can lessen visibility. And most people nowadays are not expert astronomers. For this reason, it is common to define Tzeis HaKochavim by a set number of minutes after Shkia, after sunset. We will discuss this topic more in detail in volume 7 with regard to the end of Shabbos. And will suffice here with a brief overview as it relates not to Shabbos, but rather to Kriyat Shema. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos measures the length of Bein HaShmashos, meaning between Shkias HaChama, sunset, and Tzeis HaKochavim, as the time it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil. Look at the footnote. There are other opinions of the Gemara, but we have presented the opinion commonly accepted as halacha. It should also be noted that, as is well known, based on contradictory Gemara, Rabbeinu Tam calculates Tzeis HaKochavim as being 72 minutes or 4 mil after the sun sets, not 3/4 of a mil, but 4 mil, which is significantly later than the standard time for Tzeis HaKochavim according to the Gaonim and according to the Vilna Gaon. Although many of those who follow Rabbeinu Tam as a stringency do so only with respect to when Shabbos is over. Shabbos is a skila, right? Doing malach on Shabbos, it's a much more stringent din than the din of reciting a mitzvah saseh Kriyat Shema. Some are strict with respect to the earliest times for reciting Kriyat Shema as well. There are some people that, if they daven Ma'ariv after Shkia, and the rabbi says, "Oh, don't forget to repeat Kriyat Shema after Tzeis," they wait until the later time of Rabbeinu Tam, even for that calculation. So you might as well, do it before you go to sleep, 11 o'clock at night, recite the Kriyat Shema again, for sure you've fulfilled all Shitas. And that topic will be explained in greater detail regarding the time of the end of Shabbos. But let's getting an introduction. Let's see the Gemara in Shabbos, the Itmar. Shir ben Hashmoshes Bekama. The period of time between Shkia and Seis, how much is it? Amar Rav Amar Visham Shmuel, Shloisha Chelkei Mil. 3/4 of a mil. My Shloisha Chelkei Mil, what is that? Ilema Lasapolge Mila. Do you mean it's 3/2 of a mil? Name a mil umech, so let him say 1.5 mil. Ela plus a tilsim means what we mean is 3/4 of a mil. Well, name a mil. Just round up. Ela plus a rive mil, so it means 3/4 of a mil. The Rambam writes that it takes 2/5 of an hour, 24 minutes, to walk a mil. This is the Perush HaMishnah La Rambam. That was the first sefer that the Rambam wrote. He wrote it in Arabic. I once saw a handwritten copy at the Jewish Theological Seminary in Manhattan. It was brought to me. I wasn't allowed to touch it. They have a reading room up on the 11th floor, and I saw Perush HaMishnah in the Ksav Yad of the Rambam there. He was 30 years old when he wrote that. Then the second was Yad Chazaka, and then the Moreh Nevuchim was written last when he was older. But the Perush HaMishnah La Rambam, there's a lot of halachic dinim in there. Says the Perush HaMishnah, V'shi'ura k'dei she'alech adam baraglav hiluch benoni mil echad v'hu k'dei shnei chum sheisha min hashas haShabbos. So it's 24 minutes. It follows that according to the Rambam, Tzeis HaKochavim is 3/4 of 24 minutes, which is 18 minutes after sunset. There are also opinions that a mil is 18 or 22.5 minutes, meaning that Tzeis HaKochavim is either 13.5 or 17 minutes after sunset. See the Bir Halacha, which is the Mishnah Berurah. Okay. It is also important to point out that the calculations of this time changed according to height above sea level and latitude according to the seasons of the year. For astronomical reasons beyond the scope of this year, the duration of Bein HaShmashos is shortest at the equinoxes, right? The equinox is March 21 or September 21, when the day is 12 hours and the night is exactly 12 hours. That's what makes it an equinox. Then from September 21 going to December 21, the nights get longer until the night is the longest on December 21. That's the winter solstice, where the night is maybe 14 hours and the day is 10 hours. Then the nights get shorter from December 21 going to March 21, where it's the equinox again, where it's again 12-12. Then from March 21 to June 21, the days get longer, so that on June 21 is the longest day. It's like 14-hour day and 10-hour night. So their point is that the shortish bein hashmashos is at when it's equal. It's longer both in the winter and in the summer, and the closer one gets to the poles. And this is pointed out, and that's why we all need these manim calculators in our phones, and tell you a different city where you are, what time tzeis is. This is how they do these calculations. When Shkias Achama is, that you can find the Navy puts that out. You can see astronomical charts about when sunset is. And then the concept of Bein Hashmashos is not astronomical, as we've learned now. It's a halachic term. I mean, it's technically astronomical because it relates to when the 3 average stars come out and the calculation that the Rambam made. But it's all based. Those manim calculators in our phones are based. When Shkia is, and then you have these formulas that we just went through right here to pick out when Seis is. The Gra, the Gra died 1790, 1800. But the Gra, they say, was an expert mathematician, that he studied that in the bathroom, because not to be Matul Torah, but he knew calculus and he knew all of the very complicated math. And so it's not surprising that the Gra got involved in this. In reference to the period between dawn and sunrise, right, to Alos HaShachar and Neitz HaChama, there's a similar period of time, like Bein Hashmashos, right? Aval shir zeh me'alos HaShachar Neitz HaChama eino shoveh b'chol ofek v'gam b'chol zman. Here he also points out that twilight, well, I wouldn't call it twilight, that period between Alos and Neitz differs based on where the sun is in the horizon and every season. As the calculation of each of the time it says is complicated, right? It's always advisable to check these times using a reputable.
Ra also, of course, lived in Lithuania, which is very far north. He recognized very early on that the times listed for Eretz Yisrael and Babel and the Gemara were very different.
We're different
than in Lithuania,
right?
In Vilna.
So, reciting Birchas Kriya Shema before nightfall. In the previous show we mentioned, because part of Ma'ariv is Kriya Shema. So in the previous show we mentioned that some Achronim allowed the reciting of a communal Ma'ariv before night, even when davening Mincha after Plaga Mincha. Remember that we did say that there were times that even though we normally should not use the Kula of Rav Yehuda and of the Chachamim, that means according to Rav Yehuda, you're not allowed to daven Mincha after Plag. So if you daven Mincha after Plag, you're following the Chachamim. But according to the Chachamim, you shouldn't daven Ma'ariv until after Shkia. But we said that B'shas Chak, a tzibur, could also end up davening Ma'ariv even before Shkia, if necessary. Even when you daven Mincha after Plag, if communal prayers will not otherwise be maintained. Now, if you're davening Ma'ariv and you're before Shkia, then you're saying Birchas Kriya Shema even before Shkia, right? However, the ruling that Kriya Shema must be recited after Tzeitzei Chachavim poses a difficulty for such a practice. The Rishonim already discussed that issue and cite the Yerushalmi in that context. The Yerushalmi notes that the accepted practice is to recite Kriya Shema even when davening before nightfall, and inquires as to the purpose of Shema recited at that time. Then what did you accomplish if you have to say Kriya Shema again? If you don't only have to do it after Tzeis, what did you accomplish if you said Ma'ariv before that? Tanya, Kodim Lachain, one who reads Kriya Shema before it says, Lo Yotze Dechavoso. So the Yerushalmi asks him, Came Lama Korinosa, the Vesa Knesses. So when the minions are davening Ma'ariv earlier, let's say in Bein HaShmoshes, or even B'Shas Adchak, like we said even before Shkia, Amar Rav Yosi, Ein Korinosa Vesa Knesses, B'Shvil Lotze Dechavoso, we're not reading the Shema then to fulfill our chiyuv of Kriya Shema, b'shavkacha ulkumecha, right? B'shavkacha, when you lay down at night, which is going to translate after it says, Ela k'dei lamed b'tefila mitoch dvar shel Torah. Different halacha. That before you stand up and say the Amida, you should do it after reciting words of Torah. So there we're reciting Kriya Shema as Talmud Torah, and there's an inyan. We know the inyan of being Soimech Geula L'Tfila. We say Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, then we start Shmona Esrei. But Yerushalmi is giving us another concept, that there's an inyan of standing up to daven from Divrei Torah. According to the Yerushalmi, the purpose of reciting Kriya Shema when davening before it says is only to place oneself into the right frame of mind through words of Torah. That being the case, Rav Hai Gaon, quoted by the Rashba and the Ravid, understand that the brachos before and after Kriya Shema cannot be recited when davening early. Although ideally the Amida should immediately follow the bracha of Gal Yisrael due to the requirement to juxtapose the theme of redemption to the Amida, Smichas Geula L'Tfila. And that's mentioned in the Gemara Brachos 9b and codified in the Shulchan Aruch. According to those Rishonim, meaning Rav Hai Gaon and the Ravid, this is not possible when davening early, since one may not recite the brachos of Kriya Shema before the time that one can fulfill the mitzvah of reciting Shema. The Ravid adds that for this reason, one should only daven early in times of need. Says the Rashba in his commentary on Me'emes HaKorin Shema, Nisham Rabbeinu Hai Gaon, Le'inyan tzibur shemispalin arvis v'korin Shema kodim tzeisek kechavim. That's most of our shuls. Most of our shuls were davening Ma'ariv usually after Shkia, but way before it says. V'lo motzi inish le'ikuvainu. And people can't stop that. I mean, from doing, people got to go home. It's getting dark. Yaakov once pointed out they have to get home before there wasn't electric lighting that we have now. So the tzibur had to daven early so they get home safely. Is it better to daven with a minion to say Ma'ariv, and delay the reciting the Kriya Shema until after it says? Or wait, don't daven Ma'ariv with the minion, wait until it says, go home and daven your Ma'ariv at night by yourself, the Heshiv, Rav Hai Gaon lived in like 900 in Baghdad, or in Iraq somewhere, Babylonia. The Heshiv Diveret Yisrael Oisin Kane, Mispal Arvis V'achakak Korim Bizman Kriya Shema. They daven Ma'ariv, and then they read Kriya Shema later. And l'chora, they didn't do like what we do. They actually recited the Kriya Shema with the brachas later after it says. And they basically just stood up and said Shmona Esrei for Ma'ariv without the introduction of the brachas, because he's saying we don't need smichas kula, we don't have brachat Hashem Gal Yisrael, because you're saving that until after it says Sekechavim. The chazinim de Kriya Shema adif yoser be'oinasa. Reading Kriya Shema in its time is better. The similar dover it says Sekechavim the Raisa adif. It's more because it says b'shavka of kumecha. It's more important to fulfill the Raisa de Kriya Shema adif in respect to Gula Tefillah. The whole concept of being Soimet Gula Tefillah is only rabbinic. When you can't do both. And the Ravid, Hasagas HaRavid, and Roilasus came, you shouldn't daven early, Ella L'tzorch Shah, just a temporary need, but L'tzorch L'smok Gula L'Tfila, because you have to say Gula L'Tfila. So the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah write that the brachos of Kriya Shema recited before it says Sekechavim but only after Shkia. Beforehand, the language of these brachos would not be appropriate. Yesh lishol, kivan she'eno zman kriya shema b'shah shekorin osa. He's saying that, like we do, we recite our mincha all the way up until Shkia, like the Chacham. And then we daven Ma'ariv at least after Shkia. We're not waiting until Tzeis. And the Rabbeinu Yonah say, well, at that time, it's not the time of Kriya Shema. And we're reading these brachos as well. Because we talk about Ma'ariv Aravim, there's Kochavim discussion there. He's saying, Hech yotzei de choiva ma brachos eno laila, leading Kriya Shema. It's not night. So how are we fulfilling what we're supposed to say as it's Nogea Kriya Shema? Yesh loima. Sh'afa pi she'eno laila mamish. M'nei sh'lo kochavim. It may not be mamish night. Since the sun set, as we'll explain later, it's the right time for saying Shmona Esrei. So therefore we say it's Laila regarding the brachos of Kriya Shema. Right, that's part of the nusach of the first brach of Ma'ariv. You're not creating some kind of sheker by reciting those brachas because the sun is set. But of course, you can no longer daven mincha at that time after Shkia. We also are the Hasidim and the other, right, push mincha even later. But in general, our as we learned last time, our stop for most cases of mincha is Shkia. There was b'shas adchak, you could do it later as well, but not normal. Said the Shuddha Rashba, Umasha Thomas, how do we read Kriya Shema and its brachos when it's not Seisek Kochavim yet? Al Titama, don't wonder. The brachos shel Kriya Shema and brachos shel Kriya Shema mamish k'birchas haTorah k'birchas mitzvahs. This is not like brachata asher k'dishar mitzvah al natilas lulav. You got to say it right before you shake the thing, or birchas haTorah right before you get called up. You make the bracha birchas mitzvahs. That's not the mahus, the quality of the what we call the birchos Kriya Shema, Hamayir Varavim, and the various brachos that we say before and after. She'im kain, hayalan levarch likro Shema, k'moshem varcham al Kriya Satar, al Kriya Samagila. We would have said al Kriya Shema, brachato Hashem al keinu melchut mashek l'shem yisrael tzvanu, likroa Kriya Shema, or something like that. Because we don't. Ela birchoseim shenitkanu b'fnei atzmon. These are brachos that were instituted independently of the recitation of Kriya Shema. And therefore, by reciting them prior to Tzeis, which is the time of the Shema, really, you don't have any problem. And the Shulchan Aruch rules, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbeinu Yonah, that the mitzvah of reciting Kriya Shema commences only after one can see 3 small stars. The Shulchan Aruch then rules, in accordance with the Rashba, that one may recite the brachas of Shema early, even before sunset as well. At least when one participates in a minyan that begins early, like we say, Rav Matzli Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. He already was davening Ma'ariv even before Shkia. And therefore, putting the Birchas Kriya Shema there is not a problem, the way we just read the Rashba. So it's an important Rashba. Says the Shulchan Aruch Zman Kriya Shema B'layla, Mishas Yitzir Shlosha Kochavim K'tav. So it's the most machmir. It's 3 small stars. V'muyom me'unan. If it's a cloudy day and you can't see, wait until there's no suffix. That's where we get this warning that even though we recited the Kriya Shema along with the Ma'ariv, we should recite the Kriya Shema later on, but without brachos. And if they daven even before Shkia, here he says, when you recite the Kriya Shema again later after it says, then you should do the brachos. Because by davening Ma'ariv early before Shkia, then then those things don't mean anything. Me'or lechoshech, mechoshech le'or, then you'd have to repeat it. But that's just, let's say, we'll see what the final halach is. Isma uchshigi zman kor kriya shema b'loy brachos. Now, let's repeat. Imatzibur magdimim likros kriya shema b'vod yom. Ikari imoim kriya shema b'chasa. You should read the kriya shema and its brachos. The yispalim and read and say your Shemona Esrei. And kishigiyazman korim kriya shema b'loy brachos. Then again, you read even if you did it, even if you recited those brachos, even in the daytime, the Rashba goes so far to say that those brachos were nitkan, were established unrelated. It's not really connect Kriya Shema, and we recite Kriya Shema later after it says you don't have to recite the brachos. The Mishnah Berurah explains that one may be lenient to follow Rav Yehuda and begin Ma'ariv prior to Shkia if the minyan will otherwise not take place, as discussed the previous year. We said that it shouldn't be always done, but if for some reason the minyan can't form, you can daven. We're using both kulas. We're davening mincha after plag, which is like the chachamim, but we're davening ma'ariv after plag like Rav Yehuda. We said we're normally not supposed to do that, but we learned in the mincha shir that the tzibur is allowed to do it if b'shas hatzchak they can't have a minyan. So you can follow both shitas if you otherwise, as noted as well in the previous year from the Yalkut Yosef. Sfardim today are often more lenient and recite both mincha marv after plag and before sunset, even lechatchila. We don't, but you can. Okay, so now we've established that for most of us who do daven ma'ariv ben hashmoshes after shkia, but not after tzeis, so we have a responsibility to recite Kriya Shema again after tzeis. How do you do that? How many parshios do you have to recite to fulfill this chiyuv of Kriya Shema? When you're reciting it again, to be machmir, to make sure, not even to be machmir, to make sure your yotzei Kriya Shema bisman. As we have seen before, most Rishonim agree that one who recited Kriya Shema before its time must read it again at the correct time after it says Kochavim. See, however, Tosfos, who cites opinion of Rabbeinu Tam that the practice to daven early in shul relies on alternative views in the Gemara, that the time for Kriya Shema is in fact earlier than says, based upon the opinion of Rav Yehuda. Tosfos rejects this opinion, as do other authorities. But what here that Tzurba wants to show is that there is a makor that even without reciting the Kriya Shema again after it says, there is an opinion that holds that you do yotzei. But, however, the Rishonim dispute how many of the three sections of Kriya Shema must be repeated. Rashi writes that it's sufficient to read only the first section as part of the Shema that one recites before going to sleep. Right? Says Rashi, Uvikriyas Parsha Rishona Shalom Kara Mitoso Yotza. When you read, we're going to see the dinim of Kriya Shema Lamita when you recite Kriya Shema before going to sleep. According to Rashi, that recitation is enough. You don't have to recite all three parshios. When you recited the Shema with the first parsha, you fulfilled this concept of reciting Shema after Tzesek Kochavim. Tosfos disagree and says all three sections have to be recited. He says Rashi is hard to understand because everyone recites the Kriya Shema Lamita, and only the first parsha of Inken, Shalosh Parshas Haylo Likros. He should have read all three parshas. So the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah write that repeating the first two sections is sufficient. So far we have three opinions. Rashi, one parsha. Tosfos, all three. Comes Rabbeinu Yonah and compromises, says only two. Although the third paragraph of Kriya Shema, Tzitzis, was instituted to fulfill the mitzvah of mentioning the exodus from Egypt, The earlier reading in shul is adequate for this purpose. In shul, even though you were before Tzeis, you daven Kriya Shema with its brachas. And you said Shmona Esrei. You should have a negative kavana, not being yotzei your chiyuv Kriya Shema at that Kriya. What you have in mind is that Kriya Shema that you recited earlier is that you're reciting Shmona Esrei, standing up from words of Torah. The yotzei the Kriyas HaBrachos, you yotzei the chiyuv of reciting the brachos of Kriya Shema. When you get home, and he assumes that now it's tzeis, korim sheyochol achit tzizkachov mikari also v'skavim lotzes b'yidei choiva. You have kavana to recite Kriya Shema at that time. V'ikari also kula v'mora. You have to have kavana. V'imlo yirtze likros el hashnei parshas b'vot sagi lebachi. You can get away with just reciting two parshas. V'afal pida amiyim b'Yushalmi v'tzarch laskir tzis mitzrayim bizmana. The Yerushalmi says the haskara of Yitzis Mitzrayim has to be done in its proper time, and therefore, by reciting it earlier than Seis, it was not its proper time. When you're trying to fulfill your obligatory chiv of Kriya Shema, maybe you should recite the Yitzis Mitzrayim. The bracha is b'shasha kara also v'ezakneses. You mentioned Umachal Sovratzon Kiblu Aleim Moshe of Bnei Yisrael. We talked about Yitzis Mitzrayim in the brachas. Lo mitzrachin and leilas chorus pamachas. We don't have to do it again. So the Magen Avram rules in accordance with Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah that only the first two sections need to be repeated. The Shagas Aryeh argues that the third section must also be repeated, as there's an obligation to mention the Yetzias Mitzrayim at night after Tzeitzei Kachov. Says the Shagas Aryeh, As Kars Yetzias Mitzrayim Shel Yom V'Shel Laila. When is the start of the time? How to what point does that extend? Tshuva. Nearly the shalayla tchilas mana mishas sesekachovim. Shagasai says that you must mention Yitzis Mitzrayim after it says, like everything else that's noig b'layla. To be shas sesekachovim avilayla v'lo kodem lachem. Ramin b'sof perek beis the Megillah v'yalef lahasam mikroy. It's learned from Sukkim. Hochanami, kiva dahadim askim Yitzis Mitzrayim b'leilos. We say this in the Haggadah, since it says you have to be mentioning Yitzis Mitzrayim at night. Elfinu lo mikra duchol yemei chayecha, yemei chayecha elu hayomim kol yemei chayecha l'rabbi zaleilos, kedidorish le ben zoma b'sov per kamat debrachas masnisin the kaimelon kavose, and we paskin like that. Moshe Kosovo will come in Simin Yud Beis ein zmano at says kachom davalei laila. Vafilu in his given bein hashmos. Now, even though he recognizes that people daven ma'ariv ben hashmashos after Shkia, before it says, and you've recited your Kriya Shema already, including the third parsha. Pashutly lo yotzei dechavosam. The Shagasai says you're not yotzei. V'tzarach lachzor l'haskir b'layla v'vaday, and you have to repeat all three parshios, including the Yitzis Mitzrayim one, at night. Kiva de ben hashmashos sveikuhu. It's only a suffix whether Ben Hashmoshes is Laila or not. Haikamelin Sveika Deraisa L'chumra. That Sveika Deraisa is L'chumra. The Amr Shmuel beperk Mishamesu. Sufik Amr Emes V'yatziv Sufik Lo Amr Choizav Omer Emes V'yatziv. My timer. Emes V'yatziv Deraisu. B'nei Askar Zitzi Mitzrayim Shabbat. So the Shagas Aryeh proves it from there. So reciting Kriya Shema early, according to the Vilna Gaon. So we saw above that the Shulchan Aruch ruled that if a person has a choice of davening alone and reciting Kriya Shema at the correct time, or reciting Marv together with the congregation earlier, it's acceptable to daven early and say Kriya Shema later. However, in Maaseh Harav, it's recorded that the Vilna Gaon ruled differently. Tfilas Arvis Bizmana Davka Filu B'Shabbos Bav B'Yachid Im Yefshar Lesav Asar Bizman Kriya Shema. Tfilas Arvis should be said not early, even Shabbos, and then you should wait and not do it in a minyan. You should do it alone. If you can't gather the people after it says, the Bir Halacha notes that most poskim do not follow the Maaseh Rav. They maintain that one should not miss out on a minyan in order to daven Ma'ariv after nightfall. It means there's no minyan after Tzeis. So maybe I should not daven with a minyan and say it be Yechidus. No, you should not miss out on a minyan. Similar to what we learned in the previous year, that the tzibur may recite Ma'ariv even before sunset, immediately following mincha, if the participants will otherwise leave. Rather, when the congregation davens early, one should daven with them and repeat Kriya Shema later, following the Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah Berurah also raises the possibility of davening only the Amida with the congregation and saying Kriya Shema together with the brachos later. This follows the Rav Haigod and the Ravid quoted above. The Piskei Teshuvos quotes this as having been the practice of the Mishnah Berurah himself. With Mishnah Berurah Mevi, or Derech, she is Pala Imam Rak Shmona Esrei, means you have this minyan that's davening before Tzeis, that you could just daven Shmona Esrei with that minyan. And la'achar Tzeis HaKol Kor Kriya Shema and Birchosel. And then recite the brachos with the Kriya Shema after Tzeis. The Mishnah Berurah apparently was less concerned about the smichas kula tefillah. There are people who give testimony that that's how they saw the Mishnah Berurah himself do. Al kol ponim mikol alon, roy manu shein lo lo adam lafsid tefillah b'tzibur machmas v'nogo shalolis polo mariv lifnei tzeis kachavim. You don't lose out on the minyan because of this minyan to daven mariv early. To daven Ma'ariv like the Vilna Gaon said after it says by yourself, ain't legal came. Except for people who do it, who only follow the Gra. Okay, tonight's shiur dealt with the earliest time that we can daven Ma'ariv. And next week, we will deal with the latest time for Kriya Shema at night and Ma'ariv. And Kriya Shema Lamita and the Union of Women. Maybe we'll finish next week. I don't know. But
Not next week, but the week after. Next week
right,
is
the week
Shavuos.
after. Next week is Shavuos. Those of you in the Daf Yomi tonight will be doing the Daf. I'll sign off and then we'll join the Daf Yomi soon. Everyone, you should have a good week and a good Shabbos. And today you should have a Yom Yerushalayim Sameach.
Yom Yerushalayim
Hey,
Sameach.
safe trip back.
You in Yerushalayim?
No, we were in Renana. I'll send you some videos. I think I sent you
I saw
last
the
night.
those guys singing. Yeah, I saw that. It's nice.
There's thousands of people. This is in the area in Renana.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, by the way, I davened in Shifteh looking for your brother. Maybe he davens in another shul. Shifteh is the big
No,
South
my
African.
brother doesn't have any shift.
Doesn't daven in Shifteh. But they had a guitar and a flute and drums to daven the Tfilah Chagigit last night at Shifteh. And because it's a block away from the area. So we went at it's very hot. Very
Safe
hot.
trip back. Kol tov.
Okay.
Yom Yerushalayim Sameach.
I'm tired.